Right, good morning everyone. We're going for a ride and a little chat, update on the motorcycle and some other interesting stuff. So if you'll just give me a moment to get out of the state, then we can get going. So this video might actually be helpful for not just people riding motorcycles but also cars. So firstly, thank you for all the new subscribers that has joined. Those of you that's been commenting, asking questions and so forth, really appreciate it. That's the whole reason behind this channel, is to share my experiences, not just with this motorcycle but motorcycle in general. And for those interested or just looking for entertaining content. So things we are going to cover is why ride motorcycles. That might be a minute or two talk, and then the dangers and risks associated with that, and some data points behind it, and then how do we mitigate them, be a safer rider, be a more informed rider, and a quicker rider, because that's one of the things we enjoy. Right, so let's start gearing up. Final gearing up. I'm briefly gonna talk the gear I use. So Triumph has got a very nice range of gear, including gloves and jackets and pants, but we'll cover that in a very separate video. I specifically like the armor on this gear. Hazards off, heel hold off, and then off we go. Right, so one thing sorry, a bit of the sniffles this morning. So one thing I want you to pay attention to when you get the opportunity is looking at both my hand positions, and more importantly my fingers, and I talk about my index and middle finger. So you would have seen in my previous video, and if you haven't, these on the bars, these covering your levers, always, not sometimes, always. And but we'll cover that. So first of all is why ride motorcycles. So there's a quick and easy answer to that, I think. I'm just opening up some vents. One is it really doesn't matter how young or old you are, if you're conservative or not. Acceleration is something that is seriously addictive. That is why we go on roller coaster rides. That's why we enjoy the friend's new sports car, that quick bursts. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. What makes it more exhilarating than driving a car, powerful car, is you're in the wind. You can feel it. You experience it. That roller coaster rides we talk about, it's that wind. You can feel it. It's unprotected, and so that's obviously one of the dangers, but we'll get to that. So riding motorcycles is incredibly fun. It can be done very safely, and that's what we essentially gonna talk about. I don't like this road surface. Sorry. So what I did there was on cold tires, and it looked like there was diesel hazard, was run wide. That's a very dangerous thing and a very bad habit to have. So I just wanted to mention that quickly. So riding bikes, fun, the acceleration, the wind out there, the adventure, it's really hazards coming up. Many hazards and risks. So let's get that out of the way. Here's another hazard and risk. Is the unprotected side. Yeah, you're very vulnerable, and so that's got its own danger, and why protective gear is very important. And the control of the motorcycle. So quite a bumpy road this. I've set up my suspension the way I like it, so very forgiving. So dangers. If you go and look at the data, not just in South Africa but in Europe and Spain and America, they all essentially show the same thing. So getting hurt in a motorcycle accident is essentially 27 times higher than in a car. And a lot of people, you know, that you'll just get scared away and walk away immediately, but we've got to unpack that data a little bit to understand where the nonsense is happening. So the main contributors to that incident fatality, not fatality to incidents, but it also covers fatalities, and in no particular order, is the use of alcohol when riding, yeah, excessive speeding. And I use excessive because we all, even you motor riders, when you get an opportunity, you will speed. If you say you've never speeded in your life or enjoyed doing it in a safe manner, then you are a liar. In any case, so drinking, a big problem. Excessive speeding, a big problem. Riding at night, a big problem. And then you get, so that's essentially the big culprits. If you look at the data further and you unpack it, you will see that a large majority, essentially 70% and higher, of all motorcycle accidents is single vehicle accidents, meaning the motorcycle crashed by itself. So that doesn't mean there wasn't other additional things that caused the rider to do that, and many of them can be avoided. And that is the mitigation bit I want to talk about. So before we get to the mitigation, let's just quickly talk about that significant number, which is single vehicle accidents. So there's a couple of them, and I'm gonna start with the very first one, which is not having controls over the braking, understanding grip and where it comes from. And that goes back to these fingers always covering your levers. But I'll talk about that in detail when we get there. So the causes for that significant number, other than not being in control of the controls, is road surfaces that changes, which people don't pay attention to always. And then the biggest thing contributing is low sides. So a low side is when you enter the corner and the front end loses traction and the motorcycle falls over. Now, depending on how that happens, a low side can actually be a very violent crash. It doesn't always look like it, but it can be, and I quickly want to briefly explain. If the motorcycle low sides, by the time the front wheel loses traction and you're on your side, you fell over, happens in milliseconds. There's no time to take your foot off the pegs as an example, especially on the side to which you're falling. And so what normally happens, if you're unlucky, is the motorcycle falls on top of your foot and crashes it or bends it beyond the Lord's intended range on those ligaments and bones. And that's where that severe injuries come from. The other thing is also, if you fall to your side, if you imagine me sitting on a motorcycle falling to the left, would be beside your foot, you're falling with your hip first of all. Also on the ground, significant injuries you can sustain with that, also on your shoulder and your elbows and the hands. So as I say, I'll cover that a bit more in when we talk about the protective gear and what you should be looking for. But so a low side entering into a corner can be is one of the big incidents that actually happen. The other low side you get is a low side exiting a turn. So let me quickly explain that. So if you go into the turn and either the front loses traction because there isn't enough grip or oil or too much lean angle or whatever, it falls over. That's how that happens, or some of the reasons how that happens. With a low side exiting a corner is when you unsettle the front grip, which is obviously coupled to the suspension. So if you leaned over, the front provides a lot of the grip. You roll on the throttle, not in a smooth linear manner, but in an aggressive manner. It will unload the pressure that is on the front forks, and when that happens, you unload the grip from the front tire and it loses traction and it low sides. And we're also going to cover that when we talk about the fingers always covering all the controls. The other accident you get is running wide. I've shown you an example when we started the video, and we'll talk about that, and that's all related to grip and controls. And then the other way people make an accident is the throttle roll on acceleration mid-corner or exiting the corner is high, but you lose the grip on the rear because it's spinning up, it's coming around, and then at some point in time it's going to regain grip, going in the different direction, compresses the rear shock and violently shoots the motorcycle up in the air like a pongo spring with a rider in tow. And if you're very unlucky, the motorcycle can fall on top of you or follow your slide direction and can crash you or squash you or deteriorate your impact. So that's how the accidents happen generally. So let's quickly start with a big culprit, and that's intersections, robots, and so forth. The very first thing you need to understand when you ride a motorcycle, doesn't matter how big it is, including this one, is people do not see you in time, because generally we accelerate and move quicker than the rest of the vehicles on the road. And secondly, it's a very narrow profile. So first of all, these people don't pay a lot of attention, but there is a little bit of data that shows how our eyes work. So in order to determine speed for a vehicle coming up, the further away it is, the smaller it is, and the closer it gets, the bigger it gets. But by the time, because of the motorcycle's narrow profile, by the time the eye has realized something speeding, that motorcycle is already across the danger zone. I'll see if I can find a video link or something I can include in that to give you guys an example. But it's a narrow thing. It stays very narrow, and then at some point in time it becomes big, and it's too late. It's meters away. So that's how our eyes work. Moreover, imagine a bird has got the eyes on the side of his head. But when we get to an intersection, especially, well, cars, bikes, really doesn't matter. You have to look left. Look at this idiot. Speed. He's now going to get stuck behind the other cars. Guys, this is how people lose patience and cause accidents. I know he's expecting the motorcycle to fly here, but here's a prime example of dangerous driving, overtaking on a solid white line. So this guy, let's maybe just have a look at him there in front. Traffic jam, slower traffic, so be aware. I'll catch up to this guy, but you will see this is his registration number, KY53PL. This is how people drive. Sometimes people will go and shout at them, do all kinds of things, scream, rev their motorcycles. It achieves nothing. We need to be vigilant. So I know this guy is a dangerous rider. We are getting into the twistier section, so let's maybe quickly talk about grip control and where it comes from. So first of all is grip comes from compression on the tire, and that relates to a linear progression. Let me explain it this way. If you take a motorcycle tire and you put it at a lean angle and you take it and you quickly push it, it will have no grip. It will just slide. But if you slowly compress that tire and then add on grip, that tire forms friction with the tire via compression, and the more you load it, the more it grips. I hope I explained that in a way that made sense, and that also holds true for vehicles. So if you watch Formula 1, you'll see the guys locking up the brakes, going all the way into the apex, the flat spot, the tire. And that technique is called trail braking. You keep the brakes on as you turn into a turn, because you're putting force pressure on the front wheel, and that generates grip. Simple as this. This guy here is a problem. A big problem. I can tell you now, this is alcohol. Because the behavior and the impatience in doing stuff and that risk thing is alcohol. When you're on a motorcycle, you've got horsepower, can overtake. That is where a lot of the stuff happens, folks. And he's now trying to make a point, because I think he's no, there's a car in front of him. In any case, just keep your distance, jog, observe, keep your controls covered, and watch your six. So trail braking. So here's not, we're going too slow here, but we're doing it downhill. So people are scared that if you get onto the brakes, front brakes, that you lose traction, and that is very true if it's abrupt. But I'm gonna slowly roll on, compress the front brake, and that's how I generate grip. As I said, it's too slow. Uphill, this is also going to be slow, but it becomes double lane, so I'll try and see if we can make a plan here to get past safely. And I'm not sure if the inside is going to be a good place. Is he gonna come back? Yeah, on the brakes. Now, why you need to cover your levers the whole time is, and it's not rocket science. If I'm taking mine off, if I need to emergency brake, I need to go there and start pulling. And I'm aware of this, it's pre-planned. When you're in emergency, it's not pre-planned, and that reaction time is going to take at least a second before you can start squeezing in brake pressure. So, depending on what your speed is, that 1 second is going to relate to meters. And generally speaking, when you are operating beyond the speed limit, you are going to end up in most cases with about anything between 50 and 30 meters of road where you have not applied any brakes. That relates to 2 or 3 cars or a truck, and at 30 or 40 kilometers an hour running into the back of a car or a truck, or even quicker, is going to be ugly. So once again, blind corner, brakes on, can't see the exit yet, keeping the throttle steady, leaning in, rolling off, there we go, can see the exit, roll smooth out. Motorcycle riding, and I'm doing this at very slow pace, people. Motorcycle riding is very counterintuitive. If you want to be quick, you need to be smoother on your inputs and outputs, and the control over your braking. Because folk travel too quick, brake too hard, then don't have the momentum to carry on. I'm talking about track riding in general, or riding on the road, the guys that want to be quick. And then they hammer on the throttle to make up for what they've lost for the inefficiencies during braking and cornering and being quick there, and then just compound the problem. So our dangerous driver here in front of us. I think if you ride on a motorcycle daily and make a video of how dangerous people can be in their driving habits on a motorcycle, I think you can make quite a bit of money. So guys, I was hoping for less traffic so I can show the tail braking technique a bit better. I'm not gonna push it. We'll eventually get an opportunity to showcase that. The other thing is, when you've got two fingers over the levers and two fingers on the bar with a very light grip, you need to, that's the other thing. If you go to the airport with a rental car or buy a new car and take it off the showroom floor, the very first thing you do is you adjust the mirrors and you adjust the seat and the steering wheel, the controls and so forth. But very few people, if ever, do it on a motorcycle. They take them how they come from the factory and they ride it like this. Now the way, if your controls are not set up correctly and you ride with this 2 or 3 finger technique, 1 finger technique, then when you hit the brake, as an example, to 100%, it might, before it gets there, squash between your finger and the throttle, not allowing you to achieve 100% brake force. So you need to, and I stalled the bike. Mooi man. Ensure you adjust the levers, including the clutch, so that you can ride like this without moving your fingers. So if your levers are not set up correctly and you want to go for the brake, but you know this, you have to take the other 2 fingers off and then go for the brake, which is not great because you're losing out on time. Play and back off because traffic has slowed down dramatically, and it's our old friend in the large black SUV, bakkie, that is going to cause an accident at some point in time. It's just going to happen. I'll put money on it. If I follow this person long enough, I'm quite sure we're going to see an accident. In any case, up front, Hartepeespoort Dam, I've essentially said what I've wanted to do and record. I'll maybe, when I turn around, just give you an update and a feel on the rocket. I've had it now for around 3 months. It's still the best motorcycle I've owned. On that, maybe about me, I've been driving motorcycles from the age of 16, maybe before. The very first vehicle I purchased when I could was a motorcycle. And the next vehicle after that was again a motorcycle. I've had quite a few. So back to maybe why this channel and why this content on around the motorcycles. I've had a hiatus from riding motorcycles for 10 years. With our daughter being around and other planning and using money differently. So I haven't been riding for 10 years, so I'm also just reminding myself of the habits you should have for road riding, and more importantly applying my knowledge and experience specifically with regards to trail braking, covering your levers, the way you sit on the bike and perform, because it is critical for road riding, just as critical it is for street riding, for track riding and wanting to be quick. You can be quick and safe if you trust your equipment, the tires, and so forth. So tires as an example, if I had to ask you now what is your motorcycle's cold tire pressure, front and rear, I'm quite sure the bulk of you will not be capable of telling me. Neither would you be telling me what the tire pressures would be after riding half an hour. Can you? If you can, well done. Moreover, is that based on I must show that black Mini behind me, robot is red, I stopped, which you need to do, it didn't. That is a rear end scenario. Once again, people want to get to Hartepeespoort Dam or a drinking spot or a party place or just driving scenery, and they're just impatient, intolerant, and ride when they feel like it. I mean, it was, I think, my turn. I want to get past here and then we're going to head home. Jacques, you still enjoy the motorcycle tremendously. I take it to the office. People can come in and out here. I must slow down. Guys, that's the other thing. Understand the hazards. Once you do, you don't even need to think of them. It becomes natural instinct. And you cannot just be focusing in one place. I mean, I'm looking 100 places at once. I'm not focused on anything, but I'm observing everything, if I can put it that way. Including the road surfaces, diesel spots, potholes, and other possible dangers. Man, the torque on this motorcycle, that acceleration, that rush, it's just addictive. So I will take my daughter later this afternoon. Here on the right hand side there's a venue with a coffee shop and a bookshop which she enjoys visiting, so I'll bring her. But she does not allow me to speed in the car. She always say, "Daddy, be more patient," and so forth. I can tell you one thing, when we get on a motorcycle, I can be severely illegal and she would still encourage me, so go figure. I think what we'll do is, if I take her out this afternoon, I'll I'll catch her off guard and I'll ask her in a video to give us an idea, first of all, what it's like about pillion riding, and then also maybe see what's her reaction if I prompt her around driving outside the speed limit. So this guy obviously hasn't seen me yet, so I'll just drive fast while making sure he doesn't quickly wanna change lanes. So the other thing I talked about, setup from factory. Things I've done on this motorcycle, I've covered them in all my other videos. Essentially, I've increased the preload at the rear by a lot, essentially raising the motorcycles by at least an inch in the rear. And so this motorcycle is standing 3 degrees forward biased. If I've got a pillion on the back, it levels out, which gives the motorcycle a whole lot better balance and riding capability, handling. One thing I see a lot of the journalists that take these motorcycles out for reviews all say, oh, the handling is not that great, and so forth. And a part of the reason is this motorcycle's preload from factory comes at the bare minimum. It severely affects the handling of the motorcycle, how it performs and how it brakes. So these experienced people, you know, they should be, you know, more knowledgeable. So instead of saying the handling is not great, maybe just first set up the suspension to your liking and then have a different opinion, because none of them do. If they did, they would talk about it. No funnies here. And the other thing I've done is I've increased both compression and the rebound damping on the front forks. And I think I'll do a video around that at some point, especially with regards to police. No, it's not police, it's a cyclist. I'll do a separate video on how I do the rebound compression, but it's not rocket science. Essentially, I sit on the bike, or not sit, I stand over it in a sitting position. Now, we'll talk later. On the brakes, keep braking, turning the bike in, roll on. There we go. That was a good example of trail braking. Once again, I loaded the brakes, floated in, stay in my lane. It's blind, stabilize the bike, don't need to do anything silly. This motorcycle has got traction control and cornering, ABS and so forth. Yet there's still no need to go and push it on a public road. The next guy, newbie on his motorcycle, is coming around the blind corner, drifts wide because he can't trail brake, target fixating and so forth. Or our drunk drivers on the phone, distracted, drifting wide. You involved in a head-on accident. Those are extremely unpleasant, and the reason why I say that is, in the beginning of my riding career, I was involved in one. Not my fault in my lane, but a vehicle that drifted a beautiful